All right, let's jump right in. Think of this as a detective story, maybe the biggest detective story of all time. We're on the case to figure out how every single living thing on this planet is connected. I mean, from the smallest beetle to the biggest blue whale. This is the story of life's great family tree. And to kick off our investigation, here's our first big, kind of weird clue. I mean, really think about it. What could a mushroom, a fungus, possibly have in common with you? The answer is, well, it's way more surprising than you might think, and it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today.
Get this. We share a more recent common ancestor with a mushroom than that mushroom does with a plant. Wild, right? So how in the world do we know that? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to follow the evidence step by step and piece this incredible puzzle together. Okay, so any good investigation needs a way to organize all the evidence. In biology, our first tool for sorting through the millions and millions of species out there is a science called taxonomy. You can just think of it as life's ultimate filing system.
Taxonomy basically brings order to what would otherwise be total chaos. It's the whole process of naming things, describing them, and putting them into groups. But, and this is important, it's not just about putting things in neat little boxes. It's about making sure those boxes actually tell us something real about how life is all related. So how does this filing system actually work? Well, it's a hierarchy, kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. You start really, really broad with a domain, and then you get more and more specific. Kingdom, phylum, class, all the way down to a single species. And here's the key. The further down this list two organisms share a category, the more closely related they are. It's like a cosmic address for every living thing.
And this is a really crucial point. Early scientists, they just grouped things by what they looked like. Hey, that has wings and that has wings, let's put them together. But modern taxonomy is so much smarter than that. It uses genetics and evolutionary history to build a system that's a true reflection of ancestry. It's less of a filing cabinet and more of a family album.
Okay, we've got our evidence organized. Now it's time for the really cool part, mapping out all the connections. In our detective story, this is like the big crime scene board, with all the pictures and red string connecting everything. In biology, we call this a phylogenetic tree. This diagram, it's honestly one of the most powerful tools in all of biology. It's a map of history. It shows us how different groups branched off from common ancestors over millions, even billions of years. And let's be clear, it is not a ladder of progress. It's a branching tree of relationships. And you know what? They're surprisingly simple to read once you know the basic parts. The tips of the branches, those are the species we see today. The branches themselves are just the paths their ancestors took through time. And these little points where they split, the nodes, those are the critical moments, the shared ancestors, where one lineage split and became two. So how do we actually build these trees, right? What's the evidence we're using to decide where all those branches split? Well, just like any good detective, we need to find clues. And in the story of evolution, those clues are traits. But here's the thing. Not all clues are created equal. You have ancestral traits, like having a backbone. That's shared by a huge group. Fish, amphibians, birds, us. It's old evidence. It's useful, but not for the fine details. But then you have a derived trait, something new, like hair on mammals. That's the smoking gun. These shared derived traits are the key clues that link specific groups together and tell us, for sure, who's most closely related to whom. Okay, we've got our filing system, we've got our crime scene board, we even know what kind of evidence to look for, that smoking gun. Now it's time to put it all together and actually crack the case by learning how to read this amazing tree of life. But first things first, we have to clear up the single biggest misconception out there. So many people picture evolution as a straight line, this march of progress from lower life forms to higher ones, with humans sitting right at the very top. Let me be clear. That is completely, totally wrong. The reality looks a lot more like a dense, sprawling, branching bush. Every single species at the tip of a branch today, whether it's a bacterium, a mushroom, or you, is an incredible success story. They are all equally evolved and perfectly adapted to their own way of life. There's no such thing as more evolved. So here it is, the absolute golden rule. When you look at one of these trees, you have to force yourself to ignore how similar things might look. Instead, you ask one simple question: which ones share the most recent common ancestor? You find where their branches meet.
The closer that meeting point is to the present, the more closely related they are. That's it. That's the whole game. And when we find a group that includes a common ancestor and all of its descendants, so one entire, complete branch of the tree, we have a special name for that. We call it a clade. And this is a true, natural, evolutionary family. Modern biology is really all about identifying these clades.
So, okay, we've basically solved the mystery. We know how to trace the connections across all of life. But what's the verdict? So what? Why does spending all this time building and reading these massive family trees actually matter in the real world?
Well, it turns out the impact is huge. I mean, absolutely enormous. In medicine, we use these exact same trees to track how viruses like the flu or COVID-19 evolve and spread around the world. In conservation, they help us figure out which species to protect to save the most genetic diversity. It helps us breed better crops in agriculture. This isn't just some academic exercise. It's a critical tool we use every single day. And in the end, it all leads us back to this one really profound conclusion. It proves that everything, from that mushroom we started with, to the trees outside your window, to us, we are all part of a single, epic, sprawling, and deeply interconnected story. We are all just different leaves on the same magnificent tree of life.